its block name is, right? And that's it. So that seems reasonable enough. And so now, anytime we want to know the name of something, we can just say get name and with the debug event, and then we get it. So everywhere in here that I was previously doing var name, I should just be able to put the name in, and everyone's happy and fine and dancing around like jubilant children, but not bratty children. Actually, children who are nice. And the window debug event, right? Really, really straightforward now. Let's see, anything else that happens here? Begin block has to have a counter. The counter name, I don't know if we want to touch that just yet, but we might even be able to get rid of some of that stuff too, eventually. So let's see here. Let's start compiling. Where are we at? End block, not enough expect for record debug event. That is true. That's true. We did not, in end block, pass enough stuff. So end block calls record debug event. We need a name for that block, and I don't know what it should be. Probably just end block for now, but we could pass something more intelligent there later if we wanted to, I guess. All right, so debug record index doesn't need to get stored anymore. Record index isn't even a thing, right? And so in some sense, this part can just go away as well, right? So record index can be deleted. Record debug event doesn't need to pass a counter. The counter is now no longer relevant, right? So record debug event, right? It just doesn't need to be in there for any particular purpose, at least not that I can tell, right? So yeah, unless we just wanted to put a counter in there, which we might want to do later, but not for all debug events. So I'm going to leave the part that actually gets those out just in case it becomes an issue, right? But otherwise, we're not going to deal with that. Okay. So here, again, don't need to pass it. Begin block, counter, that stuff, I think. Well, we'll just leave it and get rid of it here. All right, so translation unit is going to go away as well. Goodbye, translation unit. Let's see here. Cannot convert from debug type to Charastar. Where is my debug type? Debug type? Where is that? Debug begin data block. Debug begin data block. Yeah, so here again we have these counters. We definitely don't care about counters for any of this stuff. So really this sort of thing where we're doing record debug event, this stuff can be simplified pretty dramatically. And the block name again can just be, I guess, passed in here. Shouldn't that be a stringized version of the value? Isn't that supposed to be what that is? Why weren't we doing that before? Shouldn't that be a passed in here? Passed in here. Shouldn't that be a stringized version of the value? Isn't that supposed to be what that is? Why weren't we doing that before? I don't understand what was happening there. That just seems dumb. That seems kind of stupid, right? I mean, I don't know. That seems kind of dumb. Anyway, well, if it's dumb, it's dumb. Sometimes you're dumb, and you just got to live with that. That's just, that's your little situation you got to deal with. All right, so let's see. We got closed data block there. Record debug event. That's going to pass. There ain't no value to pass, so this is just a, end block. There ain't no value to pass, so this is just a, if it's dumb, it's dumb. I don't know. That seems kind of dumb. Anyway, well, if it's dumb, it's dumb. Sometimes you're dumb, and dumb. Anyway, well, if it's dumb, it's dumb. Sometimes you're dumb, and you just got to live with that. That's just, that's your little situation you got to deal with. All right, so let's see. We got that's just, that's your. If it's dumb, it's dumb. Sometimes you're dumb, and you just got to live with that. That's just, that's your little situation you got to deal with. All right, so let's see. We got closed data block there. Record debug event. That's going to pass. There ain't no value to pass, so this is just a, end block and data block. kind of thing. And then this guy here, this is just, again, that could pass the name, and we can get rid of this, right? We also certainly don't care about that anymore. That doesn't even exist. So let's see. Get name now doesn't have to exist either. Get name is just the name that the event has, right? So that's easy. The translation unit stuff are for matching these things. All we really have to do is match the thread ID now. This could, you know, again, we could sort of do a to-do here. Have counters for blocks. So we could put the counters just in the blocks for the extra layer of security to make sure they match, and I might do that. That seems like a pretty good idea. We'll see. So source now goes away, and anything that was coming from source can actually just be retrieved. Well, I guess we got draw rectangle check in there and get rid of that. Anything that we have from source can just be changed now to just the event. So I guess allocate open debug block doesn't need to take a source anymore, right? That can go away. And anywhere that's talking about these sources, right? That's something that doesn't actually ever need to be stored pretty much at all, right? Yeah, get record from, not even a thing anymore for the most part. So let's time we spin around. Am I not? All right, so let's go ahead and go to the Q&A in case anyone has any questions about what we were doing here. Not much in the way of questions today, it looks like. HWD2R0. Will you get back to game-related code next week? HWD2R0. Will you get back to game-related code next week? I have no idea. Probably not, no. I would not expect so. Do you ever wear the piggy hat at work? No, it kind of just sits here on the desk. Do you ever wear the piggy hat at work? No, it kind of just sits here on the desk for Handmade Hero. Do you ever wear the piggy hat at work? No, it kind of just sits here on the desk for Handmade Hero. Elvin, what would be the thing that would impress you on a programmer's resume? Elvin, what would be the thing that would impress you on a programmer's resume? I don't know, I don't read resumes much. I think I like I like watching people stream their programming. I can usually tell based on watching that if they're good or not, you know? So I probably would want to see a Twitch stream, and I'd want to see how you program on a Twitch stream. I'd like to see, like, you know, 500 hours of Twitch streamed programming that I can just go browse through and see what I think of your coding. You know? Bit off topic, but when will you do the ODE stuff? You mean the ordinary differential equation? Bit bit off topic, but when will you do the ODE stuff? You mean the ordinary differential equation? You mean just for drag? I think there was only one place that we had ODE, a need for an ODE so far, which is just, which is basically for drag, right? It's usually just you know, you you need to phrase things in terms of e to the x for drag, right? So typically, I mean, well, or for any ODE stuff. So all the ODE stuff is just if you have something, if you have something that's like, you know, you've got f of t or something equals e to the t. You know, this is like Euler's constant, like the actual e. I'm not making up the letter e. I mean the actual e in math e, right? Then the derivative of t, and my math is so rusty these days, but you know, is related to its own self, right? Meaning the function, the e to a power, right? When you take the derivative of it, still retains the same form as it had originally, right? And so when you have something like drag, where you need a function, you have a function which has its own derivative in the function, you need to be able to use this sort of this fact about e to help you solve those equations. So that's all the ODE stuff that we will do, is the fact that we have a thing where we've got, okay, f prime of t equals some constant times f double prime of, f double prime of t equals some constant times f prime of t, right? We've got the acceleration, which is this term, right? The second derivative equals some constant, which is basically the drag constant, right? In fact, let me just draw this out a little bit better for you. So this is like the acceleration of the object, the drag coefficient, and the velocity, right? And so if you want to compute this stably, where you're going to compute what f prime and if you want to be able to compute f of t and f prime of t, right? If you want to compute these two from this equation, you have different ways of doing it. One is you can numerically integrate it, where you just like assume some actual values for these things and then just do it numerically, which is not accurate, right? It's not going to be exact. It's just an approximation to it. Or what you can do is actually integrate this up by assuming that means that drag is a function of e, because it appears at its own derivative, so you know that it actually is. And drag is such a simple equation, you know, that ends up being possible. I hope that makes some sense. So that's all that's really the, you know, if you're looking for real, you know, hardcore information on ODEs, ordinary differential equations, this is not really going to be, there's not going to be much of it on Handmade Hero, so you're probably going to have to take some initiative on going and learning that yourself. I'm not really an ODE person, so it's like, you know, I'm not really the person to give you a lot of information on that anyway. But yeah. And yeah, sorry. What you said in the stream is correct. I wrote that poorly. It's actually that. It's been a long time. Like I say, my math is really rusty. T is obviously the dependent variable. That's actually what your you know, that's actually the varying variable. It's the variable. So it's the constant that's in here that actually moves out, right? So yeah. And you can kind of see, you can see why drag is so easy too if you look at these things, because if I write this again without the scribbles on top of it, right? I'm going to use C for the constant instead, since that's what I was using over here for no apparent reason. Right? You can see that, like, this form here, if you take e to the some constant times the dependent variable, if you take its derivative, you get this, right? Oops. if you have something that looks like that, and then you look at what this looks like, it's the exact same. It's this equation down here exactly, right? So you would just replace, if this is your coefficient of drag, you could just imagine like, okay, I've got this is my actual function, so now I would know what these were, right? Yeah. Like I said, I'm the wrong one to teach it. I don't know, pseudonym 73 ain't here, I don't think today. But like, you really want someone who's more into that side of that field than me to teach you ODEs. So I'll literally just do the base, like the most barest thing to get the drag working, and that's about all that's about as far as I can take you, because I just don't have the expertise to do a good job. Let's see. Xdeadbringer X. I see a lot of branching in your code. Aren't you trashing the caches and the branch predictor? Ever thinking about running HMH through cache grind? So, Xdeadbringer X. Let's see. Xdeadbringer X. I see a lot of branching in your code. Aren't you trashing the caches and the branch predictor? Ever thinking about running HMH through cache grind? So, first of all, I mean, at the risk of stating the obvious, branching is what makes a game, right? Like, branching is what creates the actual behavior, right? So, you really don't want to be thinking until your game is running and does all the things you want to do. You definitely don't want to be thinking about whether you're trashing a branch predictor or whether the fact that you have branches is going to cause a cache problem. First thing I would say is, in general, the caches, trashing the caches per se, I don't know that the kinds of branching we're doing have all that many effects on the caches. They may have problems for the cache itself, sort of the short-term fact of like, okay, if the branch is mispredicted, it may load a little extra memory that it didn't have to load or something like this. But that's really not something that you're going to be thinking about 99% of the time, right? That is such a small performance thing by comparison to what you would normally probably be dealing with. There's very limited types of code that we're going to be doing animator where you actually would ever care about that. So really, in terms of the branch predictor side of things, the branch predictor, A is pretty good, but B, the thing to remember is where we're doing the branching tends to be in places where the only alternative to doing the branching would be for you to bundle these into arrays of similar types, right? And so you could process like all your U32s together or something like that. Like, that's not really an option. There's no option, there's nothing you could do, right? There's nothing you could do in your code that would prevent you from having to go, I've got a menu filled with things, they're heterogeneous, like is what you're seeing in here, right? There's no way you could really do anything that's going to prevent some kind of an indirection. You could do an indirect jump, or you can do a branch, but they're both going to be something that's a dependent variable operation, right? And so what's the alternative? Like, what do you think you're going to change this code to do to get rid of those branches? Right? There isn't something. You're either going to have a switch statement or you're going to have a function call through an indirect, through a vtable. And both of those things are not predictable by the compiler, and certainly not by the processor until it actually sees what the value is it's going to actually use, right? So. Thank you, crew. I've been soaking up so much of this stream. As I catch up, I realize that I'm writing the usage code first nowadays. It's really streamlined by implementation brain. Just wanted to say thanks. Debate was great too. Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad you enjoyed them. And I'm glad that the usage code first stuff is helping. Chrono Dragon, been learning about x86 assembly and what I'm glad you enjoyed them. And I'm glad that the usage code first stuff is helping. Chrono Dragon, been learning about x86 assembly in one of my CS classes. Is there any way to force the compiler to use a register for a certain variable instead of a place on the stack? Well, yes and no. You can actually use the register keyword. But I don't know if it works in x64 anymore. I don't remember. So I guess I just don't know. I just don't know if this still works in x64. So I mean, all I can say is that there is a way to tell the compiler you would like something to be kept in a register. I just don't know if it actually obeys that in x64 ever. It might be one of those things it just doesn't use anymore, but you can. Yeah. So I guess you could give it a try, I guess is what I'm saying. Your mileage may vary. So, I mean, all I can say is that there is a way to tell the compiler you would like something to be kept in a register. I just don't know if it actually obeys that in x64 ever. It might be one of those things it just doesn't use anymore, but you can. Yeah. So I guess you could give it a try, I guess is what I'm saying. Your mileage may vary. Actually, instead of my Chrono Dragon, been learning about x86 assembly in one of my CS classes. Is there any way to force the compiler to use a register for a certain variable instead of a place on the stack? Well, yes and no. You can actually use the register keyword. But I don't know if it works in x64 anymore. I don't remember. So I guess I just don't know. I just don't know if this still works in x64. So I mean, all I can say is that there is a way to tell the compiler you would like something to be kept in a register. I just don't know if it actually obeys that in x64 ever. It might be one of those things it just doesn't use anymore, but you can. Yeah. So I guess you could give it a try, I guess is what I'm saying. Your mileage may vary. Culverfly, just asking, but is it worthwhile to put so much effort on the debug system at this stage? There's a lot of things we're doing right now that I'm not sure how it will help in the future. Maybe just because I've never programmed games before, but if I, as a newbie game programmer, were to work on this, do you suggest going as far as you're going right now, or proceed on the gaming part to see what I need first before doing it? Well, I guess what I would say about that is, like I said when we started the debug stuff, I wanted to take this opportunity to show how to do this kind of programming. So I'm definitely doing something a little more elaborate than is necessary, right? I mean, if all you care about is the bare minimum thing. So I would say that, you know, yeah, if you're a total novice, should you be spending a lot of time on this? Maybe the answer is no, but the other question is maybe the answer is yes, because this is something you should know how to do right here. And it's a very safe way to play around with this, and you should be able to do this kind of code, right? So I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. I guess I would say it depends what your goals are for whatever you happen to be doing at the time. That's what I would say. Right. Mr. First mentioned, well, if you would just replace the branch with polymorphism. Yeah, good point. Because polymorphism's free. The processor just does it for you, right? Elvin, what's more impressive? Mr. First mentioned, well, if you would just replace the branch with polymorphism. Yeah, good point. Because polymorphism's free. The processor just does it for you, right? Elvin, what's more impressive, previous products and practical experience versus a college degree? Are you asking me personally or in the industry? Because I don't know industry-wide. You'd have to kind of, I don't know, right? So I guess what I would say is, for me personally, I don't care if you went to college. It has absolutely no bearing on anything, in my opinion. So college degree means almost nothing. That doesn't mean that it might not be a good idea to get a college degree because of all the stuff you might learn when doing it. So maybe the college degree is a good idea to get, but the fact that you got it doesn't actually mean anything to me. I want to see the code, right? I want to see what you're actually doing and how you're doing it. James Woodman, compilers generally ignore the register keyword. Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's my assumption. I think it kind of used to work. Like, I remember you could do some things with it in the old days, but just my assumption these days is that, you know, the compiler would take it as a hint at best, you know? So, you know, the sort of what you were suggesting were like maybe, you know, you want to tell the compiler to do something specific in x86 code and it has to do it. That I don't think you can do. I don't know of a way to tell it to do that. Looks like we're pretty good with questions. Oh, and I didn't answer quite on the final thing about the person who asked the branch predictor thing. They were saying, have you ever considered running HHH through cache grind? And what I want to say about that is, like, that now is not a particularly useful time to do anything. I didn't answer quite questions. Oh, and I didn't answer quite on the final thing about the person who asked the branch predictor thing. They were saying, have you ever considered running HHH through cache grind? And what I want to say about that is, like, I'll literally just do it all. Let's see. Xdeadbringer X. I see a lot of branching in your code. Aren't you trashing the caches and the branch predictor? Ever thinking about running HMH through cache grind? So, first of all, I mean, at the risk of stating the obvious, you know, branching is what makes a game, right? Like, branching is what creates the actual behavior, right? So, you know, you really don't want to be thinking until your game is running and oh, and I didn't answer quite on the final thing about the person who asked the branch fix thing. They were saying, have you ever considered running HHH through cache grind? And what I want to say about that is, like, that now is not a particularly useful time to do that. So analyzing cache usage is something that's a very fine-tuned optimization process, right? So while you do want to kind of have in the back of your mind, if you're doing something very significant that's going to have serious architectural implications for your program that will force bad cache behavior or something, that maybe is something to think about earlier. But in general, thinking about your cache usage while you're just trying to construct the main portion of your program is just usually a complete waste of your time. Because you go through so many iterations of how things are arranged, if you then add thinking about caches to that process, when 99% of that code will not even take enough time to matter at all what it does to the caches, you're falling prey to the standard Canoe thing, which is premature optimization to root all evil. You're spending tons of mental energy on something that is irrelevant. So what you want to do in terms of thinking about caches, you want to delay that till the point where you're ready to go, what is my primary data flow through here? Okay, how do I make that, make that sort of a nice cache coherent thing? And so you really don't want to be thinking about that until you are actually concentrating on performance, which is now what we're doing at this point. Especially not going to do that in a debug system, right? Like, this code doesn't even get run on the end user's machine. So thinking about the branches in it is kind of ridiculous, right? All right, I think I don't see any more cues, so I'm going to wind down. Save our mischief blackboard. All right, I think I don't see any more cues, so I'm going to wind down. Save our mischief blackboard. I don't know why that's up. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me for another episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you as always. If you would like to follow along with the Handmade Hero development at home, you can do so by pre-ordering the game on handmadehero.org, and it comes with the source code so you can play around with it and learn from it and do other stuff, experiment and so on. We also have a Patreon page if you want to support the video series. We have a forum site if you want to ask questions or see an annotated episode guide maintained by the community, so you can catch up on past episodes, and a tweet bot that lets you know when special events are happening and the general schedule for the week if you want to catch a stream live. And speaking of catching a stream live, we'll be back here next week, and we'll be back here on Monday for the last week of Handmade Hero before I will probably be off for 2 weeks, since I will be out of the country and unable to stream. So next week will kind of be the last week of work and then before we have a brief break. So that's the situation. Hope to see you back here on Monday. Until then, have fun coding, and I will see you guys on the internet. Take it easy, everyone.